So yes, it is that time of week. I know I'm uploading this on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, which is traditionally when I like to do mock drafts. And mock draft Monday, it just kind of makes sense. Rolls off the tongue a little bit. But I did it on Tuesday instead. Screw you! I'll do it when I want. I'll do it when I want. So anyways, here I am. Updated NBA mock draft. I believe this is version 4. I posted all 30 picks for this one-round mock in the description box down below. I will admit I did not invest a ton of time into this week's model, focusing on trying to just shake it up a little bit and give a different look to it and kind of see if X scenario played out, what other dominoes Y and Z could fall into place. And I'll talk about that in a moment. First kind of reaction piece, though, is that the NBA has made the decision, and a decision I actually agree with and support, to delay and push back the draft from October into November. I believe it's either November 16th or November 18th that the NBA draft in 2020 will actually take place as it's scheduled right now, which certainly feels like the right call. Doesn't it? Am I wrong? You tell me. Would you rather them just got the draft done and over with in the month of October, or would you rather have done it in November? Like me personally, this gives a little more time for guys to work out, get ready. This gives a little more time for teams to kind of do some analysis, bring in prospects, have meetings, potentially could do some type of bubble camps, if you will. I realize that part of this was probably more related to the NBA trying to figure out what the salary cap is going to look like for next season and other financial ramifications and impacts, and trying to figure out when truly it makes sense to start the next NBA season, and probably looking somewhere after Christmas, right around New Year's time perhaps. But I am certainly supportive of November, mid-November being when the NBA draft takes place, because it gives us almost 2 months. Means I'll be able to invest in more time in actually preparing for the NBA draft, and I actually look forward to that quite a bit, believe it or not. So I'm excited. Let's take advantage of the opportunity that is presented to us. Might not be what we wanted, might not be how we thought it would go down, but beggars can't be choosers, and we have to live our lives each day taking advantage of the opportunities presented to us and making the most out of them. And that's what I'm going to do here. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about this mock draft. And obviously, a challenge to me with mock drafts and just, drafts in general, especially in the NBA, but more specifically in the NBA, is it is so much about projection. Because so many of these kids are 19 to 20 years old with 1 to 2 years of college basketball experience, a vast majority of them, especially typically towards the top of the draft, having 1 year of college experience. So it means realistically you're evaluating them based off of 30 to 40 games, depending on the team they play for and the type of season that team had. But this year, you had a shortened college basketball season on top of that. So these kids didn't even play a full slate of college season games. Makes what's going to happen here in this NBA draft this year even more interesting to me than it usually is, and potentially creates a situation where, as will be so often the case, is you'll have guys that are drafted really high that just totally crap out, and you'll have other guys that are drafted later that develop into really nice NBA players and potentially, in some cases, all-stars. And I think a lot of that is attributable to the fact that you were taking and drafting these kids so much on raw upside and potential and guessing as much as anything else based off of a very limited body of work. Like, I look at Anthony Edwards. Like, I think a lot of mock drafts right now have him as the number 1 guy. And you can focus on the positives, kind of having that dog mentality, the athleticism, the ability to get to the hole, that while he's a streaky shooter, when he's on the money, he can be really on the money. He's flashed defensive upside where if he wants to defend, he really can. But then you can focus on the negatives of his shot selection and decision-making is atrocious. He's not a great shooter statistically right now, even though the upside is there. Defensive effort is significantly lacking on a relatively consistent basis. It's like, what do you focus on? The positives of what the kid can do and what he could grow into, or the negatives of what he can't do and whether or not he's going to be able to improve in any of those areas. And it just makes it such a difficult thing, because you could look at a kid like Anthony Edwards and you could say, on the one hand, depending on the situation that you're in, there are lots of other kids in college basketball or in high schools even that could project to be in this type of NBA player. That doesn't mean that they're great NBA players. If you give them, a lot of volume opportunities to score, they're going to eventually find a way to put the ball in the hoop at some point. But that doesn't make them great players. But then you can sit there and say, in 3 years, all of a sudden as this kid gets to be 22, 23 years of age, he could develop and he could be mid-20s to 30-point per game scorer and a real difference maker and actually the real franchise player for, let's say, the Minnesota Timberwolves and not Karl Anthony Towns. Like, it's a hell of a decision to have to make on these kids because you just don't know. Like, I've got Avdija. Now I've got him going 2 to Golden State, and I could see, like, anywhere from 2 to 5. I could even argue 1 potentially, but anywhere between 2 to 5 especially. Like, Avdija makes sense to me for one of those teams. Now, I look at Golden State, when I think about that lineup of death and trying to mirror the success that you had with that lineup of death when you played the small ball and you had Draymond playing at the 5 and et cetera, like, who in this draft best allows you to play that type of style, and based off of the first few guys available, it might be Avdija. Like, he might be more truly pro-ready than some of these other, American college kids. But how do you project that? Like, he's playing professional ball, yes, but at a Euro level. It's not NBA level. It's not. So how do you project that? Like, how do you account for the lesser competition and the fact that he was young? So, how many opportunities did he really get to shine versus how that's going to project to the NBA and how those skills are really going to show up? Like, is he going to be just another role-playing type of guy like an Andres Nocioni? Or is he going to be a big-time impact wing like a Manu Ginobili? And you look at LaMelo Ball, you talk about upside. This is a kid especially that has significantly grown in terms of his frame, his body, but also his game in the past couple of seasons. So you're talking about a 19-year-old kid, isn't he? 19? You're talking about 6'7" point guard, legit handle, great vision, great instincts for the game. But he can't shoot a damn lick. And what's his effort level going to be like? What's his defensive ability going to be like? Like, you could sit there and make the argument that, a kid like that is going to be having the upside to have the potential to be the best player in the draft, in 3 years. And it certainly could hold true. But he could just end up being a role player like his brother Lonzo. Like, how do you make the distinction here? How do you make the difference? Like, for Bulls fans, if we don't end up with Avdija, like, I look at a Killian Hayes. Like, again, another point guard that can get to the hoop, that's got some great instincts for the game, certainly has some challenges when it comes to shooting and so forth. And you say, well, you just drafted Kobe White last year. Don't even consider that. Like, so many teams are playing 3-guard, in some cases 4-guard ball. It just doesn't really matter that much. But, trying to project again, like, if you're the Bulls, do you sit there and take somebody like a Wiseman and do what a Jerry Krause would do and sit there and say, hey, let's try and play 1990s basketball here? Or do you take a kid like Killian Hayes and try to modernize yourself and swing for the fences and try to hit a home run with your new version of Derrick Rose potentially? I hate to compare, to a Derrick Rose, because Derrick Rose in his time before the knee injuries was special. There's no question about that. But I just look at it, and you look at so many of these other guys. Like, again, this is a very predominant point guard and wing draft. Like, a lot of D and 3 guys, 3 and D guys, D and 3. What the hell difference does it make at this point? That could lead to some of the bigs, like Precious from Memphis, shooting up the boards, Okongwu from USC, shooting up the boards. Like, some of those guys, maybe got like Jalen Smith's going to shoot up the board quite a bit because some teams are going to feel like they have needs there and they want to make sure that they get one of the talents at those positions. But I'm having trouble kind of like piecing together this draft because it is really hard, and I can only imagine the challenges some of these NBA teams are facing because how the hell do you know? Like, sometimes you know. Sometimes you just know. That is true. But there's no LeBron James in this draft. There's no Kevin Durant in this draft. There's not one of those types of it's so obvious it smacks you across the face types of dudes. So I'll be curious to see as we go through the process over the next 2 months or so. There could be a lot of moving pieces here and a lot of things change. And I certainly expect my mocks will change as well. So check them out in the description box. Let me know how much you hate my picks. Let me know how much you think I'm wrong. Let me know all of that. Because you know what? I'm here to bring you enjoyment. And if that gives you enjoyment in your life, then who am I to stand in your way? Thank you. I'll see you later.